Hey, great to have you here. So today we're going to discuss and review the new holiday horror movie, Hard Eyes. For the format of this video, I'm going to start off with some very high-level non-spoiler thoughts on the movie, give you ultimately a rating there, and then jump into the details, which will include some spoilers. Before jumping into things, I figured I'd start off with a question for you guys. So what's your favorite holiday horror movie? And if you've seen this film, where does it fit among the holiday horror films for you personally? Jumping into some high-level thoughts on the film, this was a pretty lighthearted horror comedy that may actually surprise you with how much romance is included here. It's obviously based around Valentine's Day, and this movie's probably 60 to 65% rom-com and 35 to 40% horror, so don't let that surprise you going into it. It does work pretty well as a solid date movie, perhaps even as a Valentine's Day date. The high-level plot here is we have a serial killer who's been documented to kill numerous couples for the last few Valentine's Days, and we're put right in the middle of one of their cycles, forcing our protagonist to try to survive the night. Our main two characters are Allie, played by Olivia Holt, and Jay, played by Mason Gooding. Other recognizable faces here come from our detectives, Hobbs and Shaw, yeah, you heard that right, who are played by Devon Sawa and Jordana Brewster. I will say there's a good amount of suspension of disbelief needed here, so it works probably better as a turn-your-brain-off movie. It's funny and charming at times, while brutal and gory at others, definitely crossing genres effectively. It's probably not one of my favorite Spyglass films, but by no means is it a bad movie considering the impressive catalog that they've started to put together. It somewhat works as a Scream-esque film as far as a whodunit goes, and similar to Thanksgiving as well since it has a holiday theme here. It's predictable in some ways, but still keeps you in suspense regardless. As far as a review score rating for this one, I'm going to go with a 6 out of 10 for Hard Eyes. So above average for me. If you don't know my rating scale, anything above 5 is above average. I don't like to typically do, like a lot of places do, 7 is average. I view 5 as average, so this one being an above average film at 6 out of 10. It's one I think you can check out and have a good time with, but don't expect it to be earth-shattering by any means. So those are my high-level thoughts on the film. Now we're going to jump to do a detailed breakdown, so spoiler warning here if you don't want to be spoiled as far as the exact details that happen throughout the movie. So the movie kicks off with a really strong opening, in my opinion. It's kind of reminiscent to Friday the 13th remake that we had, where there's just a bunch of kills and slashing going on here. And we have the hard-ass killer with the machete here, so definitely reminiscent of Jason as well there. It includes some really incredible kills to kick off the film on a really positive note. We then cut to various news reports, giving you kind of the backstory on the hard-ass killer and the history he's had thus far. There's a pretty hilarious clip of a woman saying her man's afraid of the dark, and he's like, "I don't do that," which is hilarious to watch. We then cut to a coffee shop where we have a very stereotypical rom-com scene here. We have our two leads, so Jay and Allie, who don't know each other. They wind up ordering the same drink and meeting up and really clumsily, awkwardly flirt with each other. They wind up bumping heads and she winds up running off. We then cut to our two detectives, played by Devon Sawa and Jordana Brewster, investigating that opening kill scene and giving some decent one-liners here. We then cut to our main lead, Allie, and her friend at an emergency work meeting where apparently Allie has botched this Valentine's Day jewelry ad that's going on. She has, like, lovers dying in the ad, which is very bad PR-wise, since these hard-eye killer kills are going on at this point in time. Her boss, who's pretty hilarious here, is chewing her out for the whole situation. We then, in typical rom-com fashion, have the guy from the coffee shop come in here, and we find out he's pretty much the consultant to help save the marketing campaign. They wind up doing some flirting, and he winds up inviting her to dinner. Allie's friend then takes her out for drinks, followed by shopping for a dinner outfit. We see at this scene where they're out at happy hour, she carries around a metal straw, which is going to come into play later on in the movie. So Allie winds up going to dinner with Jay, and he's trying to small talk her, and he seems like the perfect guy. She winds up being a total buzzkill here, leading him to walking out. She follows Jay out there to apologize, and they wind up running into her ex, who she's really been obsessing over on social media this whole time. And in the moment, she winds up kissing Jay to try to impress the former boyfriend and act like they're together at this point in time. And at the same moment here, we have the Hard Eyes viewing this kiss take place, so we know that they're watching Jay and Allie at this point. Jay and Allie wind up getting in the same car to get rides home, and when Allie gets dropped off, she realizes her keys are lost somewhere, so Jay gets out to try to help her break into her apartment. They wind up getting into her apartment, and we get some silly rom-com dialogue here, including a vibrator scene, and this eventually leads to them running to the killer in their closet. They're pretty effectively able to fight off the hard-ass killer. They're running away, and we see the driver actually get killed as well in that scene. They run into like a botanical garden, I think, where the guy gets knocked down, and then Allie runs away to a merry-go-round, and we get a scene where the killer turns on the merry-go-round. He's about to actually attack her and kill her, and then the cops show up and he disappears. The cops claim they caught the killer, which we find out it's actually Jay that they believe they caught, and they claim that, hey, he had this mask and this weapon on him. We then cut to the police station where Jay's being questioned by Devon Sawa and Jordana Brewster, and the girl shows up there trying to tell them to let him go. We have some minor interactions here with Allie and the cop at the front there, as well as an IT guy that we see. I'm kind of thinking here the excuse gets given that the cops are all out celebrating that they caught the hard-ass killer, but at this point in time, I'm like, you have this very manic serial killer who's been all across the United States. And at this point, you're putting him in this police station with 2 detectives and 1 cop at the front and some IT guy. That's it. There's not like more security going on here and more officers at this place, but either way, once again, turning your brain off to enjoy the movie. We have some suspenseful scenes build up here. We have the hard-ass killer wind up showing up and killing that one cop with a flagpole, and then killing Devon Sawa with the machete to the groin and then to the head. We see a lot of the main characters here being shown, but we're also seeing the hard-ass killer attacking them. So at this point, I'm kind of thinking to myself, do we have multiple killers here? Because there's some people that I think are suspicious, but they're obviously in the scene, not dressed up as the hard-ass killer. So maybe have some play there, which obviously I'll talk about later on. The hard-ass killer winds up going into the interrogation room where Jay's at. He's about to kill Jay, but suddenly we see some glass breaking through the other room there, and we see that Allie's there shooting the gun through the room, and somehow she shoots so many bullets and somehow missing the hard-ass killer entirely. He winds up running out of the room. She winds up jumping over and letting Jay free and ultimately saving him. I'm not really sure why at this point the hard-ass killer ran out of the room. Bullets stopped being fired, so clearly they didn't have any more bullets, so why didn't he just run back in there and attack them again? Either way, he winds up leaving. Then we have Allie and Jay run over to a nearby drive-in theater. They wind up jumping into a van and hiding there with a couple who are hooking up very obnoxiously. We get some small talk between Allie and Jay, and eventually the hard-ass killer opens the back door and kills both the people hooking up. We get this kind of iconic scene that we saw in the trailer previously of the woman with the hole through her mouth through the back of her head. Jay and Allie are running away because everyone's in a panic at this point in time, but then Allie gets super brave and is like, Jay, we need to stop this. So they wind up taking him down. I think Jay winds up stabbing the hard-ass killer through the chest with the machete, and blood winds up getting on, I think, the mouth even of Allie, and she winds up puking all over the hard-ass killer. They wind up demasking the guy, and it's somebody we've never seen before. So definitely at this point, I'm like, we're going to have multiple killers because it's kind of weird to just throw somebody out there that we've never seen. It feels like kind of a cheap ending if that's really what they're going to go with. Definitely makes more sense to have multiple people, and this guy's kind of the fall person. Right as I'm thinking this, we have Jordana Brewster show up, and she's like, hey, Jay, I can take you home if you want, which feels very suspicious. We fast forward a bit, and Allie went home, and she feels like really depressed and feels like she really misses Jay, so she winds up saying, I'm going to go to the airport and find this guy, which I don't know about the timing here because he said he was taking off. I thought it was supposed to be 8 a.m. the following morning. Maybe I'm missing the timing of the flight he was supposed to have, but either way, she shows up at the airport, runs into some guy in the back, and awkwardly hugs him thinking it's him, but it's not him. She then gets an unknown call from the hard-ass killer. It says, go to this church. When she gets to the church, we find out, oh, it's the IT guy from the police station, as well as Jordana Brewster. So 3 people were responsible for the hard-ass kills thus far, and we find out their kink is actually killing lovers, and they wind up seeing the connection between Jay and Allie earlier in the night. Originally, they were going to go after Allie's ex-boyfriend, who apparently was friends with the people that got killed in the opening scene. When they saw them at the restaurant, they decided, actually, Jay and Allie, you're our new targets. And apparently the guy they caught earlier was just some crazed fan of the hard-eye killers, so I'm not really sure why they included that. Maybe it was just supposed to be some misdirect leading to the final act of the film. By the way, they have that guy who's the fall person earlier, and these two are really the main two that are responsible for all these kills. It's kind of cool they actually show here. I feel like typically in like Scream movies where we have the 2 killers that are taking place here, and you're like, oh, was that Billy or was that Stu? I don't really know. And you have to kind of picture it out to yourself saying, I think it was this person based off of the events that were taking place. But they actually call it out here with a few of the kills. They have the person say, oh, I was the person that killed the driver. Oh, I was the person hiding in your closet. So kind of cool to actually reveal to the audience which killers were doing which acts throughout the movie. They wind up telling Allie, hey, if this guy you're not in love with, just shoot him. And if you're not cool with that, shoot yourself. You have 1 bullet. Those are the 2 options we're giving you. And it's kind of reminiscent of the ad she ran earlier, actually, where it's like, oh, lovers that are going to die ultimately. She winds up shooting and actually hitting Jay, but it goes through him and also hits Jordana Brewster as well with 1 shot. I don't know how she wound up being so successful with that, considering how many bullets she missed earlier at the station, but either way. So at this point, the 2 girls are fighting and the 2 guys are fighting, and Jay winds up stabbing the IT guy through his eye with one of the weapons he has, and he falls down on these candles and wax falls over him. One other thing that I forgot to point out, there was a ring that was at the scene of the crime earlier in the movie where there were initials on it, JS, and they were framing Jay because I think his name was like Jay Simmons or something like that. So the initials matched him, and that's the angle they were going with. But when they were interrogating him and saying it at the scene of the crime, we just found out their names were Hobbs and Shaw. So at that moment, I'm like, Shaw, that works for the S as well. So that, along with some other facts, made me think Jordana Brewster would be suspicious here, which obviously we do get the culmination here of saying, yes, that was her initial on that ring. Her and Allie are fighting, and she's going to wind up killing Allie. But then we have Allie stab her in the neck with, yep, you guessed it, the metal straw from earlier. She winds up then pushing Jordana Brewster into this St. Valentine's statue there. There's like an arrow that he's holding. I don't know how they would have it in the church because it feels like a very violent weapon to have just out in the church, but either way, nitpicking probably with that. And then we get a very gruesome scene here where you have the combination of the arrow going through her neck with the straw as well, and eventually her neck just snaps off in its entirety, separating her head from her body. Body falls down, eventually her head falls down next to it. They definitely saved a lot of the gore for both the beginning scene and then the final scene here as well. We have a very Scream-esque moment here too, where we have Jay and Allie embracing each other. And then we have the IT guy who's like not fully dead. He's about to attack them, similar to what they do in Scream movies at the end. Jay winds up, I think, grabbing an arrow and just shoots him straight in the head, which ultimately takes him out. So as kind of expected with the rom-com type film, we have a protagonist survive here. We then fast forward 1 year, where it seems like work is going well. Allie's actually going back to med school. Then we cut to the drive-in theater from earlier in the movie, and Jay wants Allie to move in. Allie actually wants to marry Jay. Pretty much ending everything on a very happy note. We also get a mid-credit scene where just after the end of the movie, she gets a phone call and has the voice talking to her, and it's like, okay, what's going on here? Then we cut to her friend from earlier in the movie, and she's taking photos. Similar to the very beginning of the movie, we had the person taking photos of the proposal. We have that going on here with her friend taking pictures of Allie and Jay together. And I guess she wants to use some voice changer because she sounded exactly like the killer, but I don't know how they want to explain that. But either way, she does that just kind of as a joke to end the movie off. So yeah, overall, it was just a fun, cheesy, turn your brain off good time, I would say. If you saw the movie, what'd you think of it? Are you sad they killed off the bad guys, somewhat closing the door on any sequel potential here? Or do you think it fits better as a one-off story? Let me know all your thoughts on the film down below in the comments. As I mentioned earlier, share any thoughts on any holiday horrors as well. Did you feel they leaned too much on the rom-com side of things, or were you happy with the distribution they had there? Happy to talk through any of your thoughts regarding Hard Eyes in the comments down below. So thank you so much for watching, and hope to talk to you again soon.